Viewers, good morning. This is a special broadcast on Times Now. In just about 3 hours from now, in fact in less than 3 hours from now, the eyes of the world will be fixed on Tianjin in China, where Prime Minister Modi will sit across the table with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Viewers, this is not some ordinary meeting but a high-stakes diplomatic move that is being watched around the world. A moment that could reshape the contours of global geopolitics. As the shadow of the US President Trump's punishing tariffs looms over India, this summit in China is nothing short of a clarion call that puts India's national interest first. Let's make no mistake about this, viewers. This is also India's message to the world that we are not beholden to any single power, that we are truly Atmanirbhar and we will do what it takes to push India first narrative. This is Prime Minister Modi's first visit to China in 7 years, a trip that comes on the heels of a dramatic downturn in the US-Indo ties. President Trump's decision to slap 50% tariffs on Indian exports, citing purchase of Russian oil, has upset many in the power corridors in Delhi. Viewers, Trump's rhetoric calling Indian economy dead and cozying up to Pakistan has also deepened the wound. Now, this is personal for Prime Minister Modi. This is a moment for India to recalibrate its strategic compass. For Prime Minister Modi, this summit in Tianjin is a bold assertion of India's strategic autonomy. Prime Minister Modi is walking into Tianjin as the leader of the world's largest democracy, representing a country that refuses to be bullied or boxed in. By engaging with Xi Jinping, viewers, Prime Minister Modi will be sending a message to Washington and to the world. And that message is that India is not dependent on US alone or on any other country for that matter. Our national interest is non-negotiable. Viewers, the world is watching this meeting because this meeting signals India's pivot, a deliberate, calculated move to diversify trade, strengthen ties with the global south, and like many believe, assert its role as a pole in a multipolar world. As we speak, pictures of the Russian President Vladimir Putin touching down in Tianjin. And like I said, this is not just about Modi's meeting with Xi Jinping. Obviously, that is the big ticket event that kicks off in about 2.5 hours from now. But there will be other leaders from Central Asia, South Asia. And India is walking into this summit with its eyes wide open because, you see, trust is not a currency easily spent with China. While we welcome the easing of border tensions, the reopening of the trade routes, and the resumption of flights, we cannot at any cost ignore Beijing's troubling track record. And let's open this up. Swati Jooshi, who is in Tianjin, will be joining us. Srinjoy Chaudhary will be us shortly. But let's open this up. Lieutenant General KJS Dillo needs no introduction. Former GOC 15 Corps joining us live. Tushar Gupta, political analyst. RSN Singh will be with us in no time, and Abhijit Iyer Mitra will complete this panel. General Saab, to you first, good morning. A lot has been said and written about this meeting in Tianjin. As a proud Indian, what are your expectations? How do you see this?
Good morning, and good morning to all the panelists and your viewers. See, this meeting, the SCO meeting, otherwise may not have, attracted so many eyeballs, but the timing with the Trump tariffs affecting the whole of world probably, and this meeting, this group constitutes more than 40% of the world, and it constitutes nearly about 23% or 1/4 of the world's global economy. So it's a very important group and a very important meeting. And it may come out with some posturing against Trump tariffs, that's a separate issue. However, if you look at the grouping, there are no shared objectives between these 10 countries. India is the only practicing democracy, 100%. Others are bits and pieces of democracy. And this is an era of, policy uncertainties. But I am very hopeful that something would come out of this grouping. Maybe the BRICS may turn into RIC. And who knows? It is a time of just wait and watch. And I think we are in for some interesting times and some hard decisions on policy. But I still would say the main 4 pillars of any country or democracy are economy, defense, foreign affairs, and internal security. All 4 of them have to be addressed where India's questions are there. Cross-border terrorism is definitely there. Tariffs are there. Then the foreign affairs. The alignments, the realignments, you talked about multipolarity of the world. And there are major poles coming up, Russia, China, India. So we got to be looking at the realities of the world affairs, the international affairs. And of course, the defense, foreign, the home affairs, and economy. All these 4 have to be addressed so that we are clear that we have a shared fundamental realignment which is durable and sustainable.
But can that happen with China? Because given the track record of Beijing,
we cannot expect 100% from this.
You're right, General Saab. That's precisely the point that I'm making, that, while we have our list of demands and they're all reasonable, fundamental as you call them, can we trust China with it, given what the Chinese have been up to? Who can forget when a top general in India, our top general, called out the Chinese involvement in Pakistan's proxy war during Operation Sindoor? Real-time intel, military equipments, everything else. So, Abhijit, what do you think the mood will be in that room in Tianjin in China?
Pranesh, dealing with China is a bit like eating the Japanese delicacy a few hundred kilometers further east called fugu. It's a very dangerous fish called the puffer fish. And if you eat its liver, you suffer immediate paralysis. But Japanese chefs have to train for 7 years to prepare it, and they always serve a little bit of the liver. It should tingle, but it shouldn't be scary enough to kill you. China is like that. There is a lot to be gained from it, but you need to deal with it extremely carefully. And you need to eat whatever they serve up very, very, very carefully. It needs to be prepared carefully. It needs to be consumed carefully. You need to have a standby doctor. This is the entire thing with China. I will never trust China. There is no reason for us to trust China. This is a temporary blip in our relationship with America. This is not going to be permanent by any stretch of the imagination. Fine, we've kind of had to readjust our policy somewhat in order to compensate for this sudden blip. I think Modi knows that very well. Modi is no man's fool. Remember, he has never, despite the opposition's attempt to, force a sort of emotional knee-jerk response from him, he hasn't fallen for that. He's being very deft with policy. You've seen Zelensky since these tariffs came online. Zelensky has tweeted twice about India, right? So we will use China for what it is worth. When you go to McDonald's or whatever burger joint you like the burger, not the wrapping around the burger. Ultimately, the wrapping around the burger has to be discarded. This is the wrapping around. इसमें burger भी है, wrapping थोड़ा है, Shanghai नाम का, वो देख लेंगे बाद में.
It's also the double patty that some people like, which is served to them. We'll come to that, but for a note to kickstart this conversation on Shinjo, I'll come to you. But Tushar, I agree with Abhijit completely. One can't trust China.
No, I'm in complete agreement with Abhijit. You cannot trust China. You cannot think that there is a temporary arrangement where Russia, China and India are on the same table, so suddenly we can trust China altogether. Look, India and China is a tale of many firsts. There is always this nudge to rekindle the relationship, and always it somehow comes apart. It happened in 2020 after 2017. So, you can't really go ahead and say all's well and all's going to be hunky-dory in the future. Narendra Modi, as a Prime Minister, stands for everything that China despises about India. He stands for more manufacturing. He stands for empowering the MSCMCs that cut down the dependency on China. He blocked Huawei back in the day for the 5G trials. We did not shy away from banning TikTok, which is still a contentious subject in America. So he stands for everything that China despises about India, right? But today they are all on the same table. I don't know how much tariffs will be in discussion, but China also needs gain to American market. They have a trade deal, yes. They have a trade deal, unlike India, but the Chinese are also reeling from weak domestic growth. Everyone's economy is a major discussion point here. The Russians have been hammered by the sanctions after the Russia-Ukraine war. There is also Zelensky, who the Prime Minister spoke, so I think that will be also coming up at some point. So there's a lot of convergence between the three countries, but then you do not see any long-term convergence at this point. Donald Trump's tariffs, Donald Trump administration, it's good for them right now, but a year from now the midterms will come in. How do the Republicans fare? What do the Democrats gain out of it? Will the tariffs actually be a blowback in Trump's face? We don't know all of that yet. So it's very early to count your eggs and say, oh, all's well and now we have the Russia, China, India axis. It's wishful, but you don't really have it as of now.
Okay. Srinjoy, as someone in Washington, how would they be looking at this, show of bonhomie, whatever you want to call it, in Tianjin?
It's hard to say with Donald Trump because he's the most unpredictable president. We will have to see how he reacts. But yes, there are two things that are contradictory but yet have to be kept in mind. The first is, regardless of what the president has been saying, generally the American security establishment know that India is a strategic friend, a partner, and that does not change. The second thing is that yes, in the short term, you will hear all these rumbles. You will hear that here is a democracy in bed with dictators. All of those statements will come. But at the end of the day, the Americans also know that they need India. And they also know that India is a strategic partner. So there have been problems before. 1998, after Pokhran, then this Devyani Khobragade issue. There have been times when India and America have not been on the same page. And no two countries should be. Think of the British and the Americans. There are very few countries historically who have been as close for as long. But they've had problems too. So, and they've had problems recently, courtesy President Trump. So it must be said that there will be basically two views.
We're not just dealing with problem. The president is the problem.
Yes, the president is a problem. But the president cannot be a problem indefinitely. The president, regardless of anything else, at most will have another 3.5 years. After which, we are looking at a long-term relationship. This long-term relationship began in 1998 or before that. How many presidents have come since Bill Clinton? There have been a lot of presidents. And there will be a lot of presidents. So regardless of what this current situation is, as I've been hearing, America, quote, America doesn't have a border problem with India, unquote. This is what I've been hearing. But I wanted to tell you about the situation on the LAC. I've just been speaking with people, and what I hear are two or three different things. First, that things are in fairly good shape along the line of actual control. Whether this is because the PLA have got orders from the top saying that, look, keep quiet and don't do anything stupid, we don't know. But if there have been problems, and there have been basically procedural problems, some people, there is a grazing issues. Maybe X number of grazers have come when there should have been fewer, or more tents have been built, set up when there have been, where it should have been fewer.
We'll
that kind of thing.
All of that, and discuss that in detail during the course of this broadcast. Viewers, we are building up to that big ticket bilateral event, 9:30 India time, where Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping will be in one room across the table. And as we speak, President Putin deplaning there in Tianjin. He's also there. So will be the Pakistan Prime Minister, Shahbaz Sharif. Colonel Arson joining the broadcast. Colonel Arson, good morning. I started with General KJS Dillo, and he says very difficult, very hard to trust the Chinese. Abhijit Iyer Mitra says can't trust the Chinese. Tushar and I agree. You heard Sinjoy Chaudhary. Your first thoughts?
No, we have not gone there to establish any kind of a trust with the Chinese. Trust and faith in international relations is a very temporary phenomenon. But you will appreciate the fact that in the entire gathering of 25, 26 countries, we are the only member of Quad. So we are the only member of the Indo-Pacific, part of the Indo-Pacific strategy. And there are two components of this entire, visit. One is the SCO meet, of course, and the second is the military parade. So China, by itself, is indulging in huge kind of symbolism, given the massive military parade. And there are countries which will be in attendance. India, of course, will absent itself from that event. So India has stood its ground. We are doing business because, remember, this meet is taking place in the backdrop of the Israel-Iran-America war, your Russia-Ukraine war, Operation Sindoor, of which China was indirectly a part, and then in the backdrop of the tariff war. So we have to negotiate our way through. Geopolitical circumstances have definitely provided an impetus to us to, come to do business. And we will do business in the interest of the country. So I don't, of course, I mean, any rising, any power cannot be trusted for very long. We are ourselves a power. We don't need anybody's trust. It is totally transactional.
Totally transactional is the key word here. Swati Jooshi joining the broadcast live from Tianjin in China. Swati, good morning. Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping will be having that bilateral in about 2 hours from now, in less than 2 hours from now.
Absolutely. It's a big ticket event. The Prime Minister is in China after 7 long years, and the first time after the Galwan clash. I heard the discussion that is going on. Yes, you cannot trust the administration that has been involving in both cooperation and confrontation with you, but you have to tread very cautiously, and that is exactly what the Foreign Affairs Minister said, that yes, there have been challenges in our tenure, but it's time to move forward, it's time to move ahead. When India says that it's time to move ahead, India is, in a way sending out a message that it's time to diversify its strategy. You cannot depend on just one nation. It's time to engage into a multilateral system. And if you remember, Pranesh, when India had the presidency, our theme was secure. Back then as well, India's focus was on creating a multipolar world. Today as well, when the Prime Minister spoke to the Japanese media about his upcoming visit to China, the Prime Minister said the relationship between India and China is significant for regional stability and also for the world economic order. So it's not just about the bilateral ties anymore. Of course, there are contentious issues. You have the concerns of string of pearls. You have the concern of China being the all-weather friend of Pakistan. But despite all of that, you will have to maneuver. You will have to address those challenges, and perhaps those challenges are going to be addressed today in the bilateral. One would expect that the trade deficit between India and China would be addressed. India, of course, wants the members of the SCO to come together and issue a joint statement, a strong joint statement on issues like terrorism, extremism and separatism. And, which in fact was the reason why SCO was founded in the first place. From 2005 to 2017, India remained an observer, but after 2017, when India became a member nation, India has contributed and time and again raised this issue of cross-border terrorism that does not just impact India, but many countries today are facing a similar challenge. And if that joint statement is issued in the presence of Pakistan, then that sends out a strong statement. But like we know, China-Pakistan equation, you cannot overlook that, but you'll have to maneuver. You'll have to tread cautiously.
Now, given the trust deficit, Swati, let me ask you this, and I'm sure our viewers must be wondering, what's the mood like, not just in the room, but, you've spent now 2 days there. Have the Chinese been good to you?
Absolutely. They have been really good. Perhaps those are the instructions that have come from the top. Ease of operation is what I've witnessed here. Language, which I thought would be a huge barrier, and I was really worried how would I get from the airport to the hotel and make my way around. But all of them, pretty warm. With the Indian media delegation and the entire foreign media delegation here. And, you see that change here in the people-to-people connect. I've been approached by a lot of Chinese media outlets wanting to know my views on the India-China relationship. As an Indian journalist, the Chinese media has a lot of question on how India is viewing China, on how, Indian media is looking at the progress that has been made by the SCO on India-China relations at a time when there's a tariff war going on. So the Chinese media is equally excited, looking forward to this bilateral, and there definitely has been a change in attitude. Before I came to China, a lot of people, said you'll have issues connecting with people. They might not answer your queries, but that's not the mood at all on ground, at least. I don't know if it is just for the summit or if it's going to continue in the long term.
Next time they ask you about your views on the India-China ties, just tell them it depends on what Washington does on the tariff front. If they reduce the tariff, our views will change. That's the reality of this relationship. Swati, just stay with us. General Saab, you began by listing the fundamentals. As a veteran, if you were to send a message across to the Chinese leadership, what would you tell them?
See, in international relations, as Abhijit also said, there are no permanent friends or enemies, there are permanent interests. But see, Mr. Rajnath Singh a few days ago refused to sign the document because the Indian, apprehensions of cross-border terrorism were not there in that. The intentions cannot change in 10 days, the interests cannot change in 10 days, so we have to be very careful on cross-border terrorism, which is a fundamental of SCO, and the situation along the line of control. As again it was told that it's now temporarily okay, but having been in those situations, let's not get away with that it is temporarily okay, it's peaceful. Situations and intentions on the line of actual control can change any moment. And it has happened in the past, it has happened during Galwan. So let's not get fooled by that. Be very cautious, keep our interests foremost always. And this temporary tariff war, which I also said is an uncertainty of policy era. So we should weather through it, and we should not get carried away too much, because as everyone on the panel is saying, China cannot be trusted. The trust deficit is so wide, and China's interest in Pakistan is so great, that when you draw the triangle, it comes in that it is not possible to trust China just because someone somewhere has raised the tariffs against us. And Swati spoke about string of pearls and things like that, and friendship deeper than the oceans. That is the reality we have to face, and we cannot expect something big out of this thing. But notwithstanding, go with open mind, go with positive mind, and let's see where it goes and where it takes us. But trust deficit, definitely. And most importantly, about the whole member states, there is no shared objective in the past or in the future. So that puts a big question mark on the complete summit which is going on.
And if the India-Japan joint statement is anything to go by, and we'll talk about it in detail, India has drawn the red line, the proverbial red line, by talking about the rule-based order. So that statement is there. Now you can connect the two. The Prime Minister was in Japan before he landed in Tianjin in China. We're taking a short break. On the other side, we will also tell you what President Putin has said just moments after he touched down in China. Stay with Times Now. Viewers, welcome back. You're watching Times Now, and we are building up to that big-ticket bilateral event. Prime Minister Modi having a meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Here are some breaking inputs coming in as we speak. Putin has landed in China, in Tianjin to be specific, and ahead of this meeting, he has slammed the discriminatory sanctions and said that Russia, India and China will work against all of this. Srinjoy, first thoughts on what Putin has said.
You would expect President Putin to say that, because whatever you say, whatever the West says, the Russians have been very supportive of India. Now, this is not just a recent phenomenon. This is from Soviet times. And the fact that India has a relationship with Russia relates to all the things that happened even in the 70s, because the Soviet Union stood by India, and even today, the fact that we buy cheap oil from Russia, why do we do it? Because we need that cheap oil. Because at this point, if the war hadn't happened, India need not have bought oil from Russia. But India has requirements for its industry, for its other sectors, and we need that petroleum. And let's not forget, all these people who talk about India buying cheap oil from Russia are the people who buy cheap oil, and they also buy cheap LNG, and they also buy cheap fertilizer from Russia. The point is, they have per capita incomes of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000.
You're right. The
India
US
has of
hypocrisy is for everyone to see, and this is not about cheap oil or anything. This is just cheap thrills. Abhijit, we began the discussion with the McDonald or a burger analogy. Now, Swati is saying that, people there have been warm, more receptive than they would otherwise be. But all of this is in the short term, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, you can be very warm to your worst enemy. Trump was extremely warm to Putin, gave him a B-2, F-22, F-35 flight past and things like that. In order to stab somebody in the back, it is necessary first to build up enough trust so that they allow you to go behind them. So I don't doubt that at all. In fact, in all my visits to China, they've been extremely warm to me. It's perfectly fine. But remember, China is your strategic competitor. We didn't choose that position. They themselves chose that position in the 1960s. They chose to become our adversaries. There's nothing we can do about it. This was foisted on us. We're playing their game. We've accepted it's their game. Remember, even to this day, they continue to protect terrorists at the UN, keep vetoing, designations of terrorists at the UN and things like that. We need to keep that at the back of our mind. They supply Pakistan with all kinds of weapons, and nuclear weapons being the most prominent of what they've supplied Pakistan with. Not to say that, we can't pull a Kissinger on China during the 1970s. But look, even that was temporary, right? The US-China hiatus at that point lasted, 15, 20 years at best, and then it's back to competition. So China will always be a competitor. Any country that shares a direct border with you is always going to be dangerous to you at some point.
Tushar, I'll come to you. But Swati, there are many people who are curious to know that why is this meeting taking place in Tianjin? I'm sure you've had time to, explore the answer to this question, also go around the city. Could you, give us a sense of Tianjin, the place, why the choice was made, etc., etc. Also the mood in that room where you are currently in.
Well, let me show you the mood around here. This is the International Media Center from where we are reporting. It's a massive space, buzzing with energy, foreign media personnel present here, and all equipments and facilities provided to them to ensure that it's a smooth operation from here. Also, big screens put up here. We are hoping that we'll soon start getting those visuals of the leaders meeting each other. Although, we don't have an access to the bilateral meeting which is going to take place, but perhaps we'll see some visuals over here, and information will start trickling in once the meeting takes place. Also, about Tianjin, it's the largest port city in northern China. It is a gateway to Beijing and Shanghai. So now strategically why it is important. And as far as the media center from where I'm reporting is concerned, everyone here at the moment, only waiting for that bilateral to take place. You spoke about Vladimir Putin talking about the Trump tariff tirade. It also is an indication how, the Trump tariff conversation will perhaps constitute a large portion of the SCO discussion which is going to take place. So yes, everyone here excited, waiting for those meetings to start, for them to roll and to report on them.
Some people also believe Tianjin is known for its street food, something like a steamed bun. I forget the name. Maybe if Abhijit or, Tushar, they know, they can tell our viewers what it is exactly. But, Tushar, think of this as the wrestling match. Those legendary tag teams, clashes. So you have Shahbaz Sharif, walking behind Xi Jinping, hoping for shelter and whatnot. And on the other side, if it comes to that, then you have Modi and Putin.
Pranesh, after what happened a few years ago, I'm not quite sure if I would recommend Swati some street food in China. Nevertheless, you have to also look at what really India gets out of this. Look, we have a tariff situation. We cannot deny that. Can China help us in terms of economic market access? No. Can we supply China cheap textiles or pharmaceuticals or something that we were importing to US? No, it's not a market we can diversify to, correct? Now, what you can really gain out of this meeting is the standing statement with Russia, China, and India together that, look, there is an international order in the East, in Asia, that can take on this random rhetorical Western order that is being run by Trump right now. That is the only highlight you can have out of this summit. Can you talk on terrorism with China and Pakistan colluding? Absolutely not. Can you talk about Russia-Ukraine war with Putin in the room? I'm not so sure. So what you can only get out of it is the representation of an international order that can take on the Trump tariff situation, because the Russians have been hammered anti-Trump, the Chinese economy is not doing that great even with the trade deal, and Indians, of course, are under tariffs for absolutely, Trumpish reasons.
You're right. And, before we took that break, we were talking about the joint statement, the India-Japan joint statement. And Colonel RSN, the joint statement is very clear. It says that let's have a rule-based order. It has condemned unilateral action in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. So that is some indication to go by of what to expect.
No, we haven't jettisoned our Quads agenda or Indo-Pacific strategy agenda. And that is the main agenda is a rules-based, order as far as, sea lanes of communications are concerned. So we haven't jettisoned that. But having said this, what are the gains? Apart from tariffs is a very small matter, by the way, let me tell you. I mean, it is basically trade, but what we are our objective in this meet is, and I think we have partially or maybe to a great degree have already achieved it. One is this assurance of this, rare earth supply. Your automobile industry is, facing a lot of problems. And you would be aware that, China has monopoly of over 90% of the rare earth. This is something you cannot ignore at all. And then, your all these drilling machines, etc. These should be your long-term objectives. And as far as, look, you say that, you don't trust China. Nobody trusts. If you see this entire SCO composition, It is, I mean, non-members, Southeast Asia being represented in a big way. Your Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, their leaders are there. Then you have the Russians, and then you have Central Asia and then South Asia. And the Russians don't want like the SCO bank, because they fear that there will be a complete economic domination, as far as capital and goods are concerned by China. So they have always, put their foot down as far as this SCO bank is concerned. Now Southeast Asia does not want to be subsumed by this larger, Russia-China, cooperation, strategic cooperation. So and let me tell you, this Pakistan, I don't know, nobody has brought it out. In this SCO meet, if somebody is most vulnerable, it is Pakistan. Because the Americans are making inroads as far as, critical minerals and rare earth is concerned in Balochistan. That is at the cost of China-Pakistan economic corridor. Asim Munir was, made to cancel his visit to Sri Lanka and Indonesia, and he was hauled up by China.
I'm sorry to say this, that, Asim Munir does not care about Pakistan. All he cares about his post-retirement benefits that he is, accruing, so to say. So, Abhijit, to call Pak vulnerable in all this, Pak has both his hands full in this setup.
Look, vulnerability is highly overrated out here. What is vulnerability today can be advantage tomorrow. Look at Pakistan, for example, prior to the events of May. How vulnerable did they look? They managed to execute a sort of tactical comeback from the brink of nowhere. And they seem to have become the flavor of the month, or at least 2 months in DC, right? So, vulnerability again, the issue isn't vulnerability, the question is how do you deal with vulnerability? What we need to understand is Modi has proven very, very adroit at, every time you find him in a weak spot, he seems to be able to turn the tables quite well. Will it work all the time? Will it work every time? No. There will always be mistakes. There will always be loopholes. There will always be let-ups here and there. But on average, he seems to be able to do it quite well. The message that's being sent out here is quite clear. We will form temporary alliances if you turn against us. It isn't set in stone. We are not so tied to America like, say, Europe is, for example, which had to literally go crawling. I mean, you saw what happened at the NATO summit. Remember that, Pranesh? The NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte had to call Trump daddy in front of the cameras and everything, and said he is going to be very happy. We don't have to do all of that. So vulnerability hota hai, but I would never, I think Dhillon Saab is the general out here. He will tell you, you should exploit vulnerabilities, but never overestimate the vulnerabilities.
Let's ask the general then.
Yeah, thank you. See, Pakistan's geostrategic location with Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea to the south, with Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz to the southwest, Iran, the unfinished agenda to the west, Afghanistan, unfinished agenda to the north, China, the enemy, and the India, not a good friend today, onto the northeast and onto the east. China's geostrategic location and from Indian Ocean approach to, Pakistan's geostrategic location and approach from Indian Ocean through the seas gives him that situation and position where nobody can ignore it in this part of the world. So like it or not, Pakistan will remain a favorite of the West as well as also China, because Chinese want an access to the warm waters of Indian Ocean through Gwadar and CPEC, and which is not happening soon because of the situation in Balochistan. So nobody will ignore Pakistan. Pakistan is not vulnerable as far as I am concerned. Pakistan stands firm because Chinese involvement during Operation Sindoor is well known. And do we expect China to say that Pakistan is, the fountainhead of cross-border terrorism, when in the past they have been blocking in the UN Security Council our actions against the non-terrorists. So Pakistan is in a win-win situation, and best thing about Pakistan, from Pakistan's point of view, is Pakistan is ruled and governed by the military, and military knows geostrategy. And they understand how to handle geostrategic location advantages with China also and with the West also. And they're very good at it. They have mastered this art of counterbalancing each other. So I think Pakistan is in a good state from Pakistan's point of view.
Colonel Arison?
No, if the Americans are in contest with China-Pakistan economic corridor in Balochistan, and with regard to Godar port, isn't it a vulnerability? Is it so easy to balance the two? What Asim Munir has done, it stands to logic. Do you get into Balochistan without contesting China-Pakistan economic corridor? So this is the vulnerability I am talking about as far as diplomacy is concerned and strategic outreach is concerned. And when there is a question mark over CPEC, it is a big vulnerability, because remember, they have sunk in whatever 60 or 70 billion dollars. But the fact of the matter is that despite all these differences, you know, the Russians may be having their own doubts, you know, like you said, China should not be trusted. By the way, Southeast Asia is the biggest trading partner of China, $234 billion. Everybody has a problem, but yet people have decided, countries have decided to get together. Because somewhere, I mean, there is also a desire for a multipolar world. There is some, some kind of, unwritten understanding about, American hegemony. And if I may tell you that, after the last 2018 also, there was a tariff war between US and China. I know what was the consequence. The, manufacturing shifted from China in a big way because of the American tariffs. So, I mean, there is, despite all this, suspicions and, no trust, there is a kind of understanding. And you spoke about Japan. This military parade, it is to commemorate the Japan's surrender. And yet we went to Japan, we did whatever were our crucial issues with regard to Indo-Pacific strategy or, rules-based order. We didn't jettison that, and that is why I'm telling you, in the SCO, the real hero is India, because you have decided to call off the American bluff. Your strategy.
You believe the fight is against the US hegemony, the American hegemony, as it is called, and this is more than a tightrope walk, but still, there are common interests, and that common interest in this case is this discriminatory and arbitrary sanctions by the US, which is why you think India stands to gain. Let's see how this meeting unfolds, but we'll have to take a short breather, a short break. We return to this as we build up to the Modi-Xi bilateral. Viewers, stay with Times Now.